Since last week's show, a lot has changed, starting with WrestleMania. Tampa waited 36 years to get WrestleMania, and they may have to wait another 36 because WrestleMania has moved out of Tampa to the WWE Performance Center in Orlando. So it's staying in Florida, just a different part of Florida, in what will be the first ever empty arena WrestleMania. A show that would have packed in 60,000 people based on the current number of tickets sold and made millions of dollars for WWE. It would have made tens of millions of dollars for the local community, for the local economy. It will instead play to an audience of none outside of essential personnel only. Not only will there be no fans in attendance for WrestleMania, in another first 3 months after New Japan did the same thing with its Wrestle Kingdom show, WrestleMania will be divided into 2 nights, Saturday, April 4th and Sunday, April 5th, and it will be taped in advance. In fact, they are taping WrestleMania this week. If there is anything worse than a WrestleMania with no fans, it is a 2-day taped WrestleMania with no fans. Like, at the beginning of the year, if you would have asked me, how would I go about making WrestleMania absolutely insufferable? I don't even think I could have thought up an idea of an empty arena show spread out over 2 nights that didn't even air live. Who would have even conceived of this? But these are the circumstances that we find ourselves in, and it's the reason why I cannot come at WWE for it. You know, believe me, I think the idea of a WrestleMania with no fans absolutely sucks. It does. It sucks. WrestleMania with no fans and no pyro and no pomp and circumstance is not WrestleMania. It is WrestleMania in name only. But WWE was placed in an impossible situation. Now, I know it was ultimately a Vince McMahon call. He had the final say in whether or not they postponed the event or if they moved ahead with it. And I saw WrestleVotes, I think on Twitter, was the one to post that, he was hearing that a lot of the talent internally was hoping that WrestleMania would be postponed. They didn't want to necessarily go ahead with it in front of an empty building at the piece. Now, whether that's because they just didn't want to perform in front of no fans, or if there are fears for their own health and safety, that I don't know. But apparently a lot of the internal sentiment from the talent was that they were hoping that Vince McMahon would postpone it. He made a different decision. He decided to go in a different direction. If we had an end date for all of this madness, the thing to do would have been to delay it. But there is no end date for what we are going through right now. In fact, there's a lot of very reputable doctors and health experts and people that, when I listen to them and I read their positions on things, they seem pretty trustworthy. They know far more about this stuff than you or I do, who think this could carry on for a year or longer. I don't even want to think about that. The thought of that scares me stiff. That would be death for the wrestling business. And nobody wants to see that. But it could happen. But there were a lot of people involved in this process, planning for the show, planning for WrestleMania, putting all sorts of plans together for the show. It's not just a one-man show. Vince McMahon has final say, and it's his vision and all that. It's his company, it's his show, but he's not the only one working hard and putting plans for months in advance together to make WrestleMania happen. And I'm sure they all wanted this show to go off without a hitch, and there was a lot of work being put into it, but ultimately this is the answer that they came up with. And because of all the uncertainty, Vince felt that we got to move. We got to move ahead. We got to wrap up these storylines. We got to do these matches now because we may not be able to do them later on. If for whatever reason we can't get this done later on, then there could be no WrestleMania at all. He just obviously felt that was not an acceptable alternative. I'm not going to tar and feather WWE for making the call that they made, even if I hate that they did it. I don't envy the position that they're in right now. I'm sure everybody there is stressed to the max. It is a risk to be doing this because if any of their talent gets sick in these next few weeks, the whole thing, the whole company, everything they do could end up being shut down anyway. I was going to say there's still a chance WrestleMania won't happen. But if they're going to tape this week, then that cuts down on that possibility. But who knows? Even in the next few days, things are changing every day, every hour. If they wait until Wednesday, Thursday to tape WrestleMania, who knows what could happen even between now and then. This is their fail-safe. Let's get this done now. We can get it into editing. It'll be in the can. It'll be ready to go when we need it. You know, the idea that people were hoping for it to be postponed to June and do it at Madison Square Garden. Look, I'd love to see WrestleMania back one more time in Madison Square Garden. But the idea that by June, everything is going to be reopened. Madison Square Garden, which is closed, is going to be reopened and back to near normal again. You are living in Candyland. You are living in Candyland. Tell Jolly and Lord Licorice that Solomonster said hello. You know, Tom Brady, he's a Buccaneer now. He has left the New England Patriots behind. He turns 43 years old this summer. He may not suit up and play until he's 44, at the rate that things are going. Everything is in this state of suspended animation. Everything. The Hall of Fame ceremony, NXT TakeOver Tampa, they have been postponed. Well, I mean, TakeOver Tampa has been canceled. Hall of Fame has been postponed indefinitely. They will not be taking place WrestleMania weekend. Georgia Smith, the daughter of Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog, who's being inducted this year, claimed that WWE told her they were hoping to postpone the Hall of Fame until SummerSlam weekend in Boston. I think that would be a great idea, assuming there is a SummerSlam in Boston. Jushin Thunder Liger, he was finally announced for the 2020 class this week. Who knows if he'll even get the chance to accept in person. I know it's something he really wanted to do. They interviewed him in Japan earlier in the week when he found out, or when it was officially announced, that he was going into the Hall of Fame. And he said with everything going on, all the uncertainty, he was hoping it would be pushed back so he could be there in person to accept. It sounds like to him, it's a big deal and he'd like to be there for it. I hope he has that chance. One of the things that I am intrigued by with this WrestleMania is that it will apparently be taped from multiple locations. The PC will be the primary location, but some matches are going to be taped elsewhere on other closed sets to cut down on the number of people together all in one place, since the guidelines had suggested no more than 50 people in one place. Now that recommendation is down to 10, which, if that were a mandate, would make it impossible to film any wrestling shows. You cannot do a wrestling show with a closed set of under 10 people. It's not practical. But the idea of maybe doing, for example, Edge and Randy Orton, last man standing, in a backlot somewhere, like Roddy Piper and Goldust back in '96, that could be interesting. If they film it like a movie, or if they film it like something you would have seen on an episode of Lucha Underground, that could be pretty cool. John Cena against The Fiend. Maybe in a funhouse match. They could create some kind of funhouse that Cena has to enter. I mean, I know they did a match with Orton and Wyatt once from the Sister Abigail shack or whatever it was, and I mean that was certainly interesting. But yeah, maybe they do something similar, but in a funhouse type of environment. That might not be the worst idea, having rewatched their match from WrestleMania 30, which they re-aired on SmackDown this week in its entirety. It wasn't very good. It was a very story-based match. The story worked. The story was, you could follow the story. Bray was playing mind games with Cena. Cena was, scared by the crab walk, which looked ridiculous, but whatever. The wrestling itself was no good. So maybe a match outside of an actual wrestling ring might not be such a terrible idea. But when they filmed that Piper Goldust backlot brawl for WrestleMania 12, or the Boiler Room brawl that same year for SummerSlam with Mankind and The Undertaker, those matches were taped either a day in advance or as much as a week in advance. I think it might have been a week with the Piper match. I don't remember. So they've done these types of matches before. Where they could tape them in advance and edit them any which way they want to. You can edit them to make it look like a horror movie if you wanted to. Just thinking outside the box. So I am intrigued at this concept of doing it from multiple locations. If they're just going to go in the back, and just film something in the back. I don't know, that they could do that, I guess. That's kind of lame. If you're going to do it, be creative with it. Think outside the box. You could pick a couple of matches. It may only be 2. And come up with something creative if you're going to film it from another location. Now, per PW Insider, the taping schedule looks like this. They taped 2 episodes of SmackDown at the PC yesterday. That's for this upcoming Friday and the following Friday. They also taped 2 episodes of 205 Live for the 5 people who were interested in knowing that. Today, they're taping material for upcoming NXT episodes. Tomorrow night, Raw will air live on the USA Network. And then on Tuesday, they're going to be taping 2 episodes of Raw that will take them through all the way to April 6th, which is the night after WrestleMania. So that big night after WrestleMania Raw where they have all the international fans there and it's all raucous and the wild and crazy crowds, that Raw will already be taped for 2 weeks. And that's going to be weird because they're going to be taping that before WrestleMania. It sounds like the night after WrestleMania Monday Night Raw is actually being taped in advance of WrestleMania. This is almost like reminds me of those old WCW taping schedules from the early to mid-90s. They would sometimes tape things completely out of order. Somebody would come out with a title they hadn't won yet. And that's kind of what may end up happening here. WrestleMania itself, or at least the parts of WrestleMania from the PC, they're going to be taped over the course of Tuesday and Wednesday. And it just sounds so weird for me to even be saying that, taping WrestleMania. So that means WrestleMania is going to be in the can for about 10 days. 9 or 10 days before it even airs on TV. And with it being a closed set, that should at least hopefully mean no spoilers leaking, but there's no guarantee of that. There's always the risk of somebody leaking spoilers. I would suggest taping multiple finishes for at least the big matches. That way you can't be sure which finish they might actually go with. You can film Goldberg beating Roman Reigns. You can film Roman Reigns beating Goldberg. You could film Undertaker beating AJ Styles and film AJ Styles beating The Undertaker. And have multiple finishes to throw people off to, if they're that paranoid about spoilers possibly leaking. That's about the only way you can really combat that sort of thing. But the fact that I'm even talking about them doing this, it just sounds so wrong. It's very weird. Most people are going to watch it, if you do watch WrestleMania, most people are going to watch it through the WWE Network, because if not, you're going to be left paying $60 or $70 for a taped WrestleMania on pay-per-view, which I think is crazy. I know Dave Meltzer was told by WWE that depending on your provider for pay-per-view, you would either pay one price and get both shows, because it's 2 nights, or you'll have to order the shows individually, and maybe you'd get the second night at half price. Don't do that. Unless you live in a wooded area somewhere where you just can't get access to the WWE Network and your Wi-Fi is not strong enough. I don't know where you would be living if that were the case, but I suppose it's possible. Otherwise, please pay the $9.99 if you want to watch WrestleMania. Or look, hey, get it however you're going to get it. But if you want to get it on the up and up, just pay the $9.99 for the network and watch both shows. Please don't go spending $70 or $100 for both shows. That is insanity. One place that WrestleMania will not be airing this year is ESPN+. Discussions may still be ongoing between the two sides. Remember, WWE is trying to reach a deal. Vince McMahon on the last conference call thought that they could have a deal struck by the end of March. I'm sure he didn't predict that we'd be going through what we're going through right now. But that was his thought process. He thought they were far enough along that, they would be able to reach some kind of deal even before WrestleMania. That is not going to happen. It is too late for that to happen in time for this year's Mania. But WWE and ESPN have reached an agreement. ESPN is really hurting right now. They have no new sports to cover. Each of the next 3 Sundays, starting tonight, they are going to be airing a full WrestleMania show, starting with WrestleMania 30, tonight at 7 Eastern. This is after they just showed a match on Fox Friday night from that WrestleMania show in its entirety. So great timing there. The following Sunday, March 29, will be WrestleMania 32, which was a bad WrestleMania. And then April 5th at 3 p.m., because that night is WrestleMania 36, they will be airing WrestleMania 35 from last year, with Kofi Kingston winning the WWE Championship and, well, Kofi Kingston winning the WWE Championship. There really is nothing else worth sitting through again on that show that I can think of. I don't know which one of you is going to sit there and watch 4 hours of WrestleMania on Saturday night and then turn around and watch WrestleMania 35 and night 2 of WrestleMania 36 back-to-back on Sunday for 8 hours, but may God have mercy on your soul if you are one of those people. If ESPN is so desperate for content, I would reach a deal with them to air some of those great WWE 24 documentaries on there from their own network. That is some award-winning, award-worthy material that WWE has in their archives that they have worked on. I could see that happening, if it were to happen. I could see that appealing to non-wrestling fans that may watch ESPN more than the actual wrestling would appeal to them. Now, if you're not a wrestling fan and you watch sports, first of all, you probably thumb your nose at pro wrestling, as a lot of sports fans do. But if you're not a wrestling fan, you don't care. They're going to air WrestleMania 30. They're going to air, even if they aired this year's WrestleMania. What do you really care? Is that show? Are any of these current WWE shows really going to turn you on to becoming a new fan? Probably not. Too many people are going to be converted just by watching one of the current shows. But I think there could be an appeal if they watch one of these documentaries that kind of took you behind the scenes and you got to learn how the show works, or if it focused on one particular individual who had a very compelling story. ESPN has those 30 for 30 specials. I think that material could have a lot of appeal, even to non-wrestling fans. So that's the sort of thing, if ESPN is going to be needing content in the months to come. Those things are usually about an hour long each. They could tap into WWE. They could tap into their archives and start airing some of those specials. Now, the card for this year's show seems mostly set at this point. Brock Lesnar defends the WWE Championship against Drew McIntyre. Lesnar is scheduled to be on Monday Night Raw tomorrow night at the PC, but, I asked the question last week. I wasn't sure whether or not Brock was still living in Canada. Apparently, he is. He's still living up in Saskatchewan. And the border between the U.S. and Canada, in case you didn't know, has been closed to everything but essential travel only. Now, what qualifies as essential travel? That I'm not sure what the criteria is. If you are employed and you work in this country, is that not considered essential? Is it first responder? I don't know. I would think Brock would be okay. He's got American citizenship, but there's no guarantee that he'll be able to get across. I would not want to be the Border Patrol agent giving Brock Lesnar a hard time trying to get to work this week. Got Roman Reigns challenging Goldberg for the Universal Championship. I'll talk about their contract signing a little later. John Cena battles The Fiend, Bray Wyatt. Undertaker takes on AJ Styles. Randy Orton will answer Edge's challenge tomorrow night to a last man standing match. If Randy Orton was a real heel, if he was a real chicken shit heel, he'd come on Raw via satellite, wouldn't even be there in person. He'd show up on Raw on the Tron tomorrow night, and he would say, "I don't feel safe traveling." And he would turn down the match. That's what I would do. I'm not leaving my house. He's got a perfectly built-in excuse to say no to Edge. Charlotte Flair takes on Rhea Ripley for the NXT Women's Championship. Poor Rhea. They did that great video on her on NXT a couple weeks ago where she was in an empty Raymond James Stadium, taking a look around, getting a taste of what it's going to be like to walk out in front of this big stadium for the first time in her career. Unfortunately for her, Raymond James Stadium will be empty on April 5th as well. Becky Lynch defends her Raw Women's Championship against Shayna Baszler. Shayna Baszler is going to have to find a new hobby. She can't go around biting people anymore. It's not safe. Bayley defends her SmackDown Women's Championship in a six-pack challenge against Sasha Banks, Lacey Evans, Naomi, Dana Brooke, and Tamina. Tamina. Why the fuck is Tamina wrestling for the championship at WrestleMania? Just do Sasha against Bayley. Why do they need to overthink these things? Bayley said it herself on Friday night. I've already beaten all of these other women. She's had matches with Dana Brooke. She's had matches with Naomi. She's had matches with Lacey Evans. Multiple matches with Lacey Evans. She's beaten them all. All but Sasha Banks. Just do Bayley against Sasha. It will be an elimination match, though. So maybe it'll come down to Bayley and Sasha at the end, but you still don't need 6 women in this match. Seth Rollins is going to take on Kevin Owens. And we may be getting a triple threat for the Intercontinental title, with Sami Zayn defending against Daniel Bryan and Drew Gulak. That is, if Gulak can beat Shinsuke Nakamura this Friday on SmackDown. And LOL Braun Strowman, not even getting a rematch for the championship. I'll deal with him in a little bit. We are likely going to get some sort of multi-team match for the women's tag team titles. Asuka is going to be facing Alexa Bliss this Friday. And there's still talk of Beth Phoenix maybe teaming up with Natalya. And I guess we'll see. We'll see ultimately what the match is. If it's just going to be Alexa and Nikki against Asuka and Kairi, or if they'll add a third team in there. And I would have to think we'll get some kind of a match involving Dolph Ziggler and Otis. Or maybe a tag team match involving those two and Mandy Rose in some capacity. If there's one good thing, and you know what really is sad about that? I've really been digging that story with Otis and Mandy, and it's been going on for a long time. And I don't know if the idea was to pay it off at WrestleMania, right after WrestleMania, or how long they were going to drag this out for originally. But one of the things I was looking forward to was the big payoff. Or if there was some kind of big swerve or some big climactic moment at the end of all this, to see what the crowd, how the crowd would react. Crowd's really been into Otis now for a long time. And you just kind of build it and wait for that big payoff. And now you're not going to get it, at least not with the audience present. You're not going to get that big payoff and the big reaction. Or if Otis does come together with Mandy, if Mandy was going to give him a kiss, you're not going to have that moment now where the fans, cheer for Otis and they go crazy. And that sucks. That really sucks. Because I was looking forward to that big moment. And look, I'm not even saying they're going to put Mandy together with Otis at the end of all this, but you have to think, they want you to think that Mandy would never date Otis and she would never kiss Otis. It's like, Beauty and the Beast type of thing. And I'm sure that's where this is all leading to. Her at least planning a big wet one on this guy. At least if I'm him, I'm hoping. If I'm working this storyline, I'm like, hey, I'm biding my time. I can't wait for this storyline to pay off. But you're not going to get that reaction now. Sucks. If there's one good thing to all of this, it's that there will be no meaningless battle royals at WrestleMania this year. Pro Wrestling Sheet said that due to the CDC guidelines, wanting to cut down on mass gatherings, they want to cut down on the number of people in the ring at once. So no men's or women's battle royals this year at WrestleMania. Hallelujah. At least we get one positive thing out of this.